Stuffed it up. Sometimes this cross-training feels like sadism and masochism. There'll be a perfectly nice flowing track going from point A to point B, but we deliberately picked the snotty, rocky option instead. Or, if there are multiple lines up a hill, we'll pick the worst possible one we think we have a chance of getting through. I guess it's all just about pushing ourselves, trying to get the techniques for the technical shit. The funny thing is, we're absolutely stuffed by the end of a few hours of this, then realise we've only done maybe 10 to 15 kilometres the entire ride. Hard to believe we used to regularly knock up 80 kilometres or so in a morning's ride when we just stuck to the easier tracks. Anyway, as we get the hang of a tricky track or a particularly nasty line, we'll try doing it without stopping or not putting our foot down. I can't say I was particularly good at trials riding, but I know that year of working hard at it helped hugely with better balance, throttle, clutch control and finding traction. There's still so much to learn, of course, but trials riding was definitely a big head start with all of that stuff. Obviously there are times it's just well beyond our skill level, but one thing I noticed Jarvis and all the top extreme riders do is where possible they'll stay standing and paddle with one leg. I had a bit of play with this in some uphill ruts and I can see why they do it. Compared to sitting down, you can keep your balance a lot easier and your legs are still acting like suspension to get extra traction to the rear wheel. And you can weight and de-weight the foot peg still if you need to jump up tree roots or little ruts within the ruts. With many of these techniques you'll have a favourite side. I noticed paddling with my left leg was much harder, so I'm going to need extra practice with that. Obviously once it gets truly gnarly, even the top riders will all sit down and paddle with both legs, but I can see now why they use this standing and paddling where possible before resorting to sitting down. So this is the second ride on the Motos hybrid rear and golden tyre, fat front tyre. We hit a few tracks with very soft sand. It's great how that wider front tyre just stays on top of the sand instead of digging in. Never been much good at soft sand, but starting to find I'm virtually ignoring soft sand now. And I thought the trials type pattern on the rear would just tend to spin in soft sand, but the Motos hybrid's got plenty of grip. I suspect a lot of that's to do with running at 0 psi with the tubeless system. I've just got such a large footprint on the rear. We hit a few patches of mud again this ride, and again both tyres were fine, but definitely going to need to try them on a proper mudfest style ride. I figure there's got to be a point at which the Motos hybrid clogs up with mud and simply won't work as well as a knobby. Time for some hill climbs. Andrew had seen this nasty mother in the vids and wanted to give it a shot. Personally, this one gives me the willies after some whiskey throttle moments with the Kato a few months back. While I lack the grace of Romaniac Rod, who just rides up this one without dabbing, I'm now getting up with some paddling, no doubt thanks in large part to that semi-trials pattern that grips really well on this sort of rock face. On to the next hill. Again, Andrew wanted to give this a try because he'd seen it in the vids. He did incredibly well paddling his way to the top on only his second attempt. He's getting it! While it is a tricky hill, it seems once you've got up this one, it usually gets easier because it is much of a mind game. And it's not long before you can cruise up it without stopping after your initial success.
I see the right hand side's quite a bit trickier, so sort of give it a try. Yeah, it's bloody hard, alright. It's not the prettiest hill.
As for this one, momentum's usually your best friend for climbs, but there are so many step-ups on this one it forces you to slow down, which I like. It really makes sure you put your traction control to the test.
Good. Caveman. Dash Barkbuster with rock.
Anyway, back to the sadism and masochism theme. Ages back, I said instead of dirt riding, we could always just spend $12,000 on a gold-plated hammer, then hit ourselves all over with it every Sunday in the comfort of our lounge room. It would achieve roughly the same end result as dirt riding, plus it would amuse our wives and long-suffering girlfriends. But somehow it just wouldn't be the same really. Mostly because once you bought the hammer, there'd be no further expenses, whereas a dirt bike, you just keep shelling out the money.